Chapter 8.
True to his word, Dr. Shaw had the film back that afternoon from the university's photography department. He threaded it into the projector, Gary turned off the lights, and the first picture flashed on the screen. Once more they were in the tunnel, the line of divers seen dimly in the pink light from their underwater torches. It was as if they were back again in the murky water, slowly swimming toward their fantastic find. Jordan had kept the camera going while he approached the entrance, then passed through it to the interior. Then they entered the huge cavern. The next picture brought an exclamation from Dr. Shaw. Impossible. His voice rang out as the image of the strange red block filled the screen. But the picture which followed brought gasps from them all. It was the close-up Jordan had taken through the small peephole of clear crystal on the side of the strange red block. "Why, it's him," Jordan exclaimed. It seemed impossible, but there was no denying what the camera had captured. Despite the blurred quality of the image, they knew they were gazing on the face of the lizard man. Only, this was no carved statuette. The eyes were closed, as though in sleep, and the scaly flesh was deathly white. The garment he wore seemed to be of finely meshed cloth or metal that had the appearance of silk. It was a long moment before anyone spoke, even after Gary turned the lights on. Finally, the doctor said, "Asleep. He's asleep. 100 million years ago, but it's just as if he'd been placed in the tomb yesterday." His words had broken the spell, and the questions came thick and fast. Asleep? For 100 million years? How could he be that old? What makes you so sure, Doc? How did he get down there anyway? Dr. Shaw held up a hand. "Hold on, everybody, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking. It may sound insane, but I believe our friend was placed in there for a definite purpose. And it wasn't simply to be the guest of honor in a coffin." Jordan interrupted. "How could anything stay unchanged for all that time? I mean, surely the water and the pressure itself would have broken that block to pieces ages ago. Why, sunken ships crumble after just a few centuries, Doc. Suppose," Dr. Shaw continued, "our lizard man was encased solidly in that block, like a fly in amber? Suppose every trace of air was removed and replaced with transparent material which hardened about him? You know, Jody, like this." The doctor picked up a plastic paperweight and hefted it. Jordan could see a perfectly preserved butterfly inside the clear block. "Only," Dr. Shaw added, "instead of plastic, let's suppose the solid material were much more durable? As hard as diamond." Again silence. Then Gary let out a disbelieving snort. "Or, Doc, a hunk of diamond 10 feet long?" "I didn't say it was a diamond," the doctor calmly replied. "Perhaps a substance as hard as diamond. Artificial perhaps. Created by methods beyond our present understanding. Remember, our little statuette is almost beyond belief, but it exists." The doctor ran the film again, and put the projector on stop action so that they could study the close-up of the sleeping figure. The ringing of the telephone interrupted them. Dr. Shaw answered. They saw him smile as he talked in a low voice. "That was Professor Fuller at the museum," he said when he had hung up. "Well, we have some news. Ladies and gentlemen, it turns out that our statuette is not a garden variety diamond at all. It is absolutely pure. What's more, Professor Fuller's associates believe that it was artificially produced. A synthetic super diamond. Diamonds are manufactured today, of course, but this one was made by someone or something a million centuries ago." Dr. Shaw drummed his fingers on the desk as he considered the next step to take. "Under the circumstances," he said, "it looks as if we'll have to get more help. Naturally, we want to raise that coffin to the surface. And that will mean a lot of new problems. Those problems were enormous. Not the least of them would be to keep the entire affair a secret operation. If the newspapers get a hint of what we're really up to," the doctor explained, "they'll be swarming all over the place. You newspaper men should know that. The museum people are preparing a cover story to explain the ship they're sending up here. So, as far as the public is concerned, this is merely a routine dredging for marine specimens." A more immediate problem was the weight of the crystal coffin. From its size compared to that of the statuette, Dr. Shaw had estimated it might weigh several tons. That is, if it's made of the same synthetic diamond material, he added. More likely, though, it is quartz. We'll have to wait to find out. I hope we have a chance to be in on things, Jordan muttered at one point. After all, it's our discovery. Don't worry, Dr. Shaw assured him. They'll supply the equipment, winches, drills, and so on, but Stan here will head the underwater operations as the museum's representative, and we are to be included among the salvage personnel. Which is probably the most logical arrangement. After all, we're strictly amateurs in salvage work, and this is too important a find to bungle. The big man went on, we can't blast through the cavern ceiling. Too much chance of a cave-in. We'll have to drill. Stan has already left a signal transmitter on the block itself. We'll pick up its impulse from above with sonar gear on the ocean floor. When we've zeroed in, we'll start drilling down. Let's hope the transmitter won't be too far down for us to pick up its signal, or that the walls don't somehow shield it. Anyhow, that's what they'll try. When we make a suitable opening, we can try to raise the coffin to the surface. The ship's due day after tomorrow. Jordan tried in vain to work on the newspaper. Only the assistance of Laurie and Miss Haverford, the university's journalism instructor, brought the next issue out on schedule. Tell you what, Jody, Miss Haverford suggested, I'll have my summer semester class help you with the next few issues if you like. I'll credit it toward their final grade. Jordan gratefully accepted, and quickly joined the others in awaiting the arrival of the museum's salvage vessel. When the Cartwright finally stood offshore, all 5 of the dock watchers were on hand awaiting transportation to her across the channel. The Cartwright was an ugly vessel, a converted minesweeper with a 15-ton derrick aboard. All along her decks were various sized winches. A heavy mast stood amidships to support the huge derrick and its steam winch. And when they finally climbed aboard her, they found the deck littered with wire hawsers, buoys, grapnels and piles of rope. Squat, functional, and efficient, that was the Cartwright. She boasted a crew of 14 and 6 officers. Laurie was given a small cabin for herself, but all 4 men were jammed in together. They had little need for accommodations, since they could go ashore every evening, but their gear filled the cabin and bunks. An hour later, the boat floated over the Purple Cave, the first cave that Laurie and Gary had discovered. In the swift currents it took 15 minutes to drop and secure anchor. The skipper of the Cartwright, Captain Lang, decided to send 2 divers below on an exploratory mission. Gary drew the assignment of guiding them to the approximate location. The 2 frogmen slipped below the choppy sea and Gary signaled them toward the eve. Following the rough plot they had worked out, based on Stan's estimates, they swam along near the bottom, but above the rocky ridge that overlaid the tunnel. This was the first time Gary had gone over the ocean floor rather than inside the passage. They were on the alert for the 3 small signal transmitters which Stan had left at strategic locations during their first trip through the branching tunnel. Using detectors, the frogmen soon picked up the first one. This would be the position of the twin openings. Gary could now that the sea-blocked passage was close to the reef. They swam on, bearing north along the shoreline. The second signal was raised by the leading frogman. Now they were above the entrance to the larger cavern in which the drowned building stood. Gary looked around. Nothing special here, just a jumble of rocks. And then, at last, they heard the final signal. On reaching their destination, one of the divers sent up a small marker balloon. He tied its nylon cable to a convenient boulder on the ocean bottom. Their first job was done. Back aboard the ship, Gary saw the 3rd balloon bobbing in the waves about 50 yards beyond the reef. The ship's anchor was hoisted, and they steamed to the permanent location. A heavy buoy was dropped in the sea, replacing the balloon. Now what? Gary asked Stan. See that long thing alongside the derrick? Stan asked. It's a special drill, like the ones for boring oil wells. We're going to see if we can use it to drill down into the burial chamber. If we succeed, we'll try to cut out a large enough opening to hoist up the box. Come on, let's take it easy a while. They'll be several hours securing the drilling apparatus and getting ready. And now that the sea's gotten a bit choppy, we might have to wait until it settles down. By nightfall, the casing had been lowered to the ocean floor and divers were at work readying it. The changeable sea was almost glassy calm now that operations had to be halted until dawn. The week past slowly crawled, Gary thought. But at last the drilling began. The tough corundum bit curled its way through the several feet of organic silt that overlaid the sea bottom and then struck rock. Hour by hour the drilling continued. Deeper went the drill. A diver telephoned up progress reports. They were into 10 feet of rock 20. 40. Stan and the doctor exchanged worried glances. "How far down did you say the burial chamber was?" asked the older man. "My gauge read 120 feet when we entered the big cave," Stan replied. "Let's see the ocean bottom 60 feet down where they're drilling. They've dug in another 30. That means we should be about through the roof by now, since you told me the chamber was around 20 feet high. Just a rough guess, Doc. Distances are misleading underwater. Anyway, the building sits in a depression. Might be another 20 feet lower than at the tunnel mouth where I looked at my gauge." The voice of a diver came through tinnily on the loudspeaker. "Hey up there. I think we just broke through." Stan and the doctor exchanged happy grins. The drill was pulled up and out of the hole. It was positioned in another location about 2 feet from the first entry. They would continue doing this until the cave roof was honeycombed with holes. Small charges could then be lowered to blast away a single, larger hole. This could then be enlarged to permit lowering of cables for lifting out the huge cube. It would be tedious work, taking several more days. Captain Lang worried continually about the weather holding. "Late June's not the best time for salvaging in these waters," he grumbled. "Blows up a gale in a few hours." But the work went on.